Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone is doing great. I know around in our neck of the woods, school is getting ready to start this week. Some of you may already have kids in school and ready to go. Please pop in the chat box and say good morning. See where everybody is coming in from today. Kind of getting my stuff all set up here with the chat box too. So if you are here and you are on this morning, please go ahead and pop in. Kristen is with the Quilt Show team in Denver taping their shows. Hi, good morning, Laverne. Good to see you. And so she will not be on this morning, so we're kind of on our own. So help me out by popping in and saying good morning. I want to share with you, I've had a couple of trips here recently. Hi, Mary. And the one to Omaha, I think I told you I went to the museum, and just saw some great, Victoria Finley Wolf had a great, and I think the Quilt Show did a little spot on that this past week, and also Sue Spargo. So that was really wonderful. So if you're anywhere in the Midwest and traveling around and head through Lincoln, go ahead and stop. Today I want to share something with you. I'm a book nerd. I love books of any kind, and probably from my years of teaching, but I want to share a book that I bought there. I also am very fascinated with and love color. And I've taken a lot of time to really study color in terms of how it works with quilts especially, and in my art. And I want to share just the sweetest little book that I found there with you this morning. So if you don't mind, I'm going to have story time with you. And this is the name of the book. It's called You Are Light. And these pages are, open with kind of like a stencil type thing. And it's called You Are Light from Aaron Becker. And each page as you go through, it starts with the yellows, calling it the dawn. This is the light that bring the dawn to warm the sky, and you can see the different, goes from, lighter to the darker shades. And then it moves in with the yellows into the next, which are the pinks. And it's talking to warm the sky and hug the land. And then it goes into the blues. It sips the sea to make the rain. And you can hopefully see, going from light to dark blues. Which waters wheat to grow the grain. And we got the oranges down here. It feeds the leaves that shade the earth. And now we're moving into the greens and the shades of those. It brings to life each blossom's birth. We're moving into the purples. Those are a little harder to see on camera. It lights the moon to kiss the night. And this light is you, and you are light. But what I really love about this is I've set it on my desk, and as I do, the light shines through and I see all the shades of, the color wheel. And it's absolutely stunning little book. And if you sit and really ponder it and look at it, you're going to notice that you just pick up some insights with color and how those blend together. And of course, I've talked on color wheel before, and we'll do that again, many times with that. So today we're going to be cutting the Desert Windmill block. And before that, I have a couple of more quilts to share with you. But the reason I wanted to say that now is so that you can grab a piece of paper, because I'm going to give you secondary instructions for the cutting that I have decided to do. And for me, here is to take a look at a pattern, to see what it's doing, reading it, understanding what the author is wanting to happen in that pattern. And we talked about that 2 weeks ago. And now I'm going to take what she has done, which is beautiful, and she wrote a great pattern, and it's fine exactly as it is, but I want to but I just want to make it easier for myself. And so I'm going to share that with you today of how I'm going to do that. So grab a pencil and a piece of paper, and so if you want these other directions, because it's really the only place that you will get them. And but first, in the chat box, if you will, I would like you to let me know how you did if you were doing your own fabrics, if you were finding your own fabrics in your stash, how you went about getting those combinations for each of the blocks. As you know, I'm going to drop down to the table. I separated all of the fabrics that came in the kit by lights, mediums, and darks. And I really, just for the sake of those who like to follow a pattern and, you know, have the sense and look of what the pattern had on it, Kristen had filled in the front of the pattern with the fabrics that were in the kit. So I worked to get the same fabrics, you know, combinations together. And so I think I got that pretty well from looking at the picture. So I separated all of my fabrics into those three, light, medium, and dark. Because this pattern really deals a lot with dark, medium, and light. And for those of you who are finding your own, these 2 weeks were to go through your stash and find your light, mediums, and darks of all the fabrics that work together, and talked a little bit about laying them out so that you're going to have a very good cohesive quilt by the time that you are done. So if you don't mind, if you would just drop me a line and say, this is how I did it, this is what I did, that helps me, but it also helps each other as you go about doing that. And so we're gonna work at cutting, and this is the page that I'm, you know, really going to be working from, especially with this section up here, this part, because it's telling me what I need and where the darks go, where the mediums go, and where the lights go. And I, you know, measuring and going back to the cutting directions of that. So as I did the cutting directions, I basically did it per block, and I simply wrote it out for me, what I needed in the light, what I needed for the medium, what I needed for the dark, and I circled and put an arrow because these two, the light and medium, you cut exactly the same, but the dark changes a little bit, and then the background colors I needed for the block. So that's what you're going to basically get from me today as we walk through the cutting of each one of these blocks. All right, but before we get to that, I want to share with you, last month I taught a block that was, that's the close-up. Let me get the other one. I taught the block with the squares that kind of look like they ended up as a circle. So Kathy took that block and decided that she was going to shoosh it up, and she really did, and I just love what she did on this. She did this embroidery work, and it was from Alex's class that has been ongoing online as well. And so she took the stitches and things that she learned in Alex's class, combined them with the quilt, the block that she learned here, and made this just this gorgeous pillow. And so then here is, let me get this one. And then you can see the close-up of it, a little bit more of the stitching and the colors that she used in the middle of that. But isn't that just lovely? I really like it. And then Bonnie shared with me her railroad block with very muted colors, where I went crazy bright with the black and white a few weeks back. She did her railroad block with the more muted colors, and it's so beautiful here. When I look at it, this section here almost looks like a landscape painting. So abstracts kind of stuff. I really like it. Good use of light and dark in that. So let's see what we're so using Ruby Beholder and Grayscale on the phone to get enough contrast. Excellent. Because this is one of the things. And Charlene, I'm sorry you got a nasty cold. I'm dealing, you probably can hear it in my voice, I'm dealing with a little bit of a cough and stuff like that too. So I get that. It's not any fun to go through that. All right. Thank you for popping in and doing that. Using red, white, and blue with a light gray background for a Quilt of Valor. That's awesome. What a great idea. And this block really lends itself really well to a Quilt of Valor. So excellent, Kathy. Thank you for sharing that. All right. Let's get to cutting this block out. So for, I went ahead and did my strips just to make this go a little bit quicker in the work today. So we're going to start with, and this is per block, not for the whole thing. It's just for each block. I'm going to be giving you, what I did. And the first thing I'm going to do is press that line out, and I'm going to pay attention to my selvage there. I'm not particularly going to cut it off. I'm just not going to take the time to necessarily do that, because I'm also using, as I believe I told you 2 weeks ago, I'm using these star singles. I really appreciate and like them, and they are available in the Quilt Show store, or you can get them at your local quilt store if they carry them as well. And I'm getting the 1 1/2 inch because that's what they finish at. And when they put the size at the top of the star singles, it's the finished size. So we want these blocks to finish at 1 1/2. So I am using these star single papers, and it tells you that it's finishing at 1 1/2 blocks, and it's telling you what size to cut the square of fabric to get those half square triangles. And so we need a 5 1/2 or a 5 inch square, and I just cut so that I have enough with this selvage. And then for the part of the block that makes the flying geese here, I am going to use and make those 4 at a time, because I have 4 quadrants in the block. And so to me that just seemed like a quicker, easier way to go about doing that. So in that block I need a 4 1/2 inch square and 4 2 5/8 inch squares to make those, and that's out of the light fabric, so we'll get there. So to get my first 2 cut on this, I've got a 6 inch square, and I am simply going to put my ruler, and I'm paying attention to my selvage right here. And so I want my 5 to butt up against that, just so that I have enough fabric, because we're going to use this fabric again, the leftovers from what I'm doing with this, in the border and those little wing units in the sashing. So I am basically going to cut my double layer, and I just make things, I try to keep them as easy for myself as I can, and I'm going to separate them. And I'm not going to worry about my 5" because it's going to go with the paper. So now I want to cut this down to 4.5. And that's the second square size that I need. And so I put that at 4.5. Avoiding the selvage side again. And that I can use for scraps along the way or whatever. So now I have, out of my light fabric, one 4.5" square, which is here, one 5" square, and now I need 4 2 5/8" squares for the next part of the block. And I think that I can pretty much get those out of here. So I'm gonna trim the selvage. And my little bit of space here, I got to get it so where I can get my ruler in there. And so 2 5/8. I'm cutting the 2 at a time. I'm leaving them folded together. And another 2 5/8, which will make up my 4 that I need. Excuse me. And then I have this left over, and just for the sake of, then I have this left over for both my border and for my sashing for later. And I'm going to put that to the side there. And I'm going to keep this. So out of my light, I have finished cutting all that I need for this block out of my light piece. Okay? So now I'm going to go to the medium and do exactly the same thing. And again, I'm going to press out that seam, make sure it is straight the way I need it. And I am doing this just as for ease, really nothing more than that. And I want a 5" square and a 4.5" square. So I'm lining up, you know, since this is a 6" ruler, I'm just getting it straight on there and then around my sewing machine. I've got things. So I'm going to take those apart. I'm not going to worry about my selvage on that side. And now I want to get my 4.5" square cut. And I've talked about this before, but for anyone who may be new, when you're putting your ruler on your fabric, make sure that that line is laying right up against the fabric, your cutting line, because if it's not, you're going to be a little bit off in your cutting. So you don't want to do that. Okay. And so I have my 4.5-inch square, my 5-inch, and now I want my 2 5/8 inch out of this. And so I need to trim my selvage. And I measure from out here at the 1-inch line because there is some distortion with the plastic. And so I go out here and make sure that this black line is correctly. And then I am sure to get, and so I want 2 5/8. And I could cut a strip out of here. I'm just choosing not to. And 2 5/8. And that went a little bit over. And it's all right. So that is my medium fabric. And now I want to do my dark. And as I said, this one changes now. And I'm going to go ahead and cut off the selvage on this one just because it makes it a little bit easier with what I'm doing. But I want to press it. And also, the heat of the iron kind of keeps the fabric together a little bit better. All right. And on the dark, I still need my 4.5 and my 5-inch square. So I'm going to cut those two exactly as I have been doing. So I'm going to give myself just a tad bit of room on the 5-inch. This is very awkward cutting for me, by the way, with the machine so close. And so now I want to get my 4.5-inch square. And also on this one, I need 4 3.5-inch by 2. And so I can cut a 3.5 by 2 inch, and I can get 4 of them out of this section. Okay. So 4 3.5 by 2. All right. So now I have all of the colors that I need for, the pieces that I need for my dark, medium, and light. And now I'm going to move to my background fabrics. And so the first one that I'm going to cut is that I need 8 2-inch squares. So I've cut my strip already, and again I'm going to cut these double, and so I need 8 2-inch squares. So I will, there's my first 2, my second 2, there's 6, and 8. Okay. So I'm going to put those aside, and then I need 4 2 5/8 squares. And so I cut a 2 and 5, strips of a 2 5/8 out of, and I see that I needed to trim a little there. So I'll put that aside, and then I'll get my other 2 that I need. So 4 2 5/8 squares. And then the last thing that I need out of my background is 3 5-inch squares. And so I'm making sure that everything's aligned there. So I cut strips at 5 inches. And I need 3 of those, and I'm just going to go ahead and cut 2 and save 1 for the next block. So I'll take that one and put it aside. All right, so I want to go back to the picture here for a moment and have that. I keep my picture close at hand because now I'm going to work at stacking these up by block, and kind of share with you how I'm doing that. So I am going to work backwards, if you will, because I cut them, first the light, then the medium, then the dark. So for this row, because I will be sewing them in rows, I have my dark fabric with my light fabric, and this, as you know, are my half square triangle papers. So I take what I need from each of those, and so I need my a 5-inch dark fabric for this, plus one of my 5-inch background fabrics, because the white part on this is that. I will cover that with my paper or use the paper first, whatever. So now, and then I need my 3.5-inch by 2-inch rectangles for here. Okay, so now I have row 1 completed. So here I need my dark 4.5-inch square, and I need my medium 2 5/8 squares, and that's going to make up my flying geese, the 4 of them. And I need my medium 5-inch square, as you can see from here, and and another one of my papers. Okay. So I have my half square triangles right here for this. So I have my, you know, flying geese and my half square triangles. All right. And I could put the papers the other way, whichever way makes the most sense for you. So then for this row, I need my medium 4.5 inch square and my light 2 5/8 inch squares. For my flying geese, I need my 5 inch light square and for the half square triangles. Okay, so I've got those four. I've got my half square triangles, and then for the light one I need my light 4.5 inch square and my four background pieces for that, and then I need my 8 2-inch squares. So now I have my block lined up that I can sew them in rows. Then once I have, you know, each row made and all the pieces together, I sew them by row and then attach them all together. Let me go and to the chat box and see what. All right, if there's any questions. Okay, I don't see any questions right now, but I really appreciate those of you who kind of talked about how you chose your fabrics. So that's good, you know, cutting each block like I just did is going to take a little bit of time, and because there are 12 blocks in the full quilt, you know, I don't know if everyone is going to make those. Now, one of the things that I do want to say to you in terms of the cutting, we have not done any of the sashing cutting, which is at the bottom of this page of the pattern, and we haven't done any of the border cutting. I am going to be doing both the border cutting and the sashing cutting after we've made our 12 blocks. All right. So this week's, you know, hopefully project for you will be to get each of your blocks cut. And so per block for your light fabric, you're going to need a 5 inch square, and you're going to need one 4.5 inch square. All right. And you're going to need 4 2 5/8 inch squares. So that is the same for both your light and your medium. For the dark piece, you need one 5 inch square and one 4.5 inch square. And you need 4 3.5 by 2 inch rectangles. And hopefully as I was cutting that, you got that written down. For your background, you need 3 5 inch squares from the background fabric. The little, they kind of look like little squares thrown on there. If you got the kit, you need 3 5 inch squares, 4 2 5/8 inch squares, and 8 2 inch squares. Okay, and that is all you need to cut for this next week. And next week we're going to sew this block together and show you how it is going to look. And if you'll wait just a second, I'll grab my first one. All right. And so this is next week's, what we're going to tackle for that. And so this is one of the 12 blocks sewn together, and that's what we'll be doing for next week. Let's see if there's any other questions. Can you say again the size of the pieces for the 4 at a time flying geese? And how do you layer the geese blocks so that you get the fabric colors right? I'm not sure exactly what you're saying on the bottom part. The pieces for the 4 at a time flying geese are the 4.5-inch square and the 2 5/8 inch pieces that you cut. And so when I look at this picture here, I am going row by row. So here is the 4 at a time flying geese for the first one. This is showing me it's a dark color, and the other part of the flying geese is, let me get a, so the corners are medium fabric. So I'm going to have one 4.5-inch dark fabric, and this is where I need those 2 5/8 inch pieces, and you're cutting 4 of them out of your medium fabric. So those are the 2 that go together in this row. And your 5-inch squares for your half square triangle, here it would be medium and background. Here it's the dark and the background. Here it is the light and the background. And this flying geese is the medium fabric, as you can see by the color that's here, and the light fabric. And here it is the lightest fabric at the 4.5, and the background fabric is your 2 5/8 inch square. Hopefully that is helpful to answering that question. And these are the 2-inch squares that you cut out of the background again. Any other questions that I can answer for you? And Laverne, did I answer that question? And we're going to talk about sewing and layering those blocks so you get the fabric colors, and it's going to sew up, and that will be next week that I'll show you on the sewing. So hopefully you can let me know if that answered that question. So if there's no other questions for that, then this week you will be just simply cutting out all your fabrics for the 12 blocks. And again, each block is different. You've got your dark, you've got your medium, you've got your light on each block, and it fits in with the the background just beautifully. And I've had it on my design wall. It looks wonderful. So Kathy and Bonnie, thank you for sending in previous blocks that you've made on the class. Thank you for those who kind of put up how you went about gathering your fabrics, because I think it's helpful to all of us in the block. And I will see you next week as we put this block together and get that sewn. And then we'll move on to the sashing. And then the week after that, we will get the borders on, and this quilt will be in the books in a few weeks. And I think you're going to enjoy putting it together for that. So either cut it exactly the way the pattern tells you to cut it, because everything is good to go on that, because I've sewn it both ways, blocks, with the way that it was originally. And then as I was doing it, I kind of noticed that for me, that it just went a little bit quicker, a little bit easier for me to cut and do it the way that I just showed you. And I wanted to show you the way that I had done it, because I guess I can. And so I did. And I hope you enjoyed the Storytime book. I just think it's beautiful, and I loved it. And have a great week. Enjoy the cutting, and I will see you next Saturday. Bye.